Hello everyone, today we are taking a look at the GEPRC CineLog25. This is a 2.5-inch prop, and you might be looking at this and thinking it's something like this. Well, this is much more versatile, and I think we're going to have a little bit of fun today. This comes in 3 different varieties. The one I have here is without a receiver, so it is using the Caddx Vista to control, and I flew it with the DJI radio. But you can get it in a FrSky RXSR version or a TBS Crossfire version. Link down in the video description. The price ranges from $279 all the way up to about $310, depending upon which version that you get. You can't really see it, but down in there is the all-in-one flight controller with a 20 amp ESC and an F4 processor. Again, kind of buried, but underneath here is the Caddx Vista. Comes with the Nebula Pro in black. It also comes with a lead that you can plug into a naked GoPro or an SMO action camera. The motors are the Speedix 1204 3750 kV motors. The props are 5-bladed Gemfan D63 props. The camera is mounted to this rubberized gimbal protected plate, which also features a mount for an action camera. Battery is toilet tanked, runs this way side to side. We have an unknown capacitor on our battery lead, which really doesn't do all that much to clean up our electrical noise. Motor post from motor post, I'm getting about 110 millimeters. The bottom carbon fiber plate looks to be about 2 millimeters. The main carbon plate looks to be 2.5 millimeters. The top plate for your action camera and your Caddx Nebula Pro is 2 millimeters. The foam padding runs all the way around the hoops, but does separate here in the back. It weighs just about 130 grams. I flew it on these 3 different batteries, but I found myself drawn to the 550 milliamp 4S battery. They're all 4S, by the way. With the 550 milliamp battery, it weighs just over 201 grams. With the 650 milliamp battery, it weighs just under 190 grams. And with the 520 milliamp battery, it weighs just over 185.5 grams. It does come with an extra set of props. Hopefully you can see here some of my props are a little bit chewed up from all my flying. It comes with 2 extra battery straps, a naked mount, so you can put it right up here on top of your top plate. It comes with 2 of these pads that you can put right here on the bottom if you want to add some protection down there. But I didn't use them. Also comes with a battery mat, which I didn't feel I needed either. As you can see, mine's still naked. Comes with some extra prop screws, little hex tool, Vista instruction sheet or quick guide, little cards so you can reach all the GEPRC socials, and 2 sheets of stickers. I'm going to show you what is a semi-aggressive flight style. I've cranked up the camera angle just a little bit, but I'm going to do more than CineWhooping, that's for certain. Hopefully you noticed there on the table we have a fair bit of wind, 15-mile-an-hour winds. And that was something else that surprised me, but we do have the weight and on this to be able to manage that wind a little bit. You will see in other flight footage that I'll show you that the wind does have an effect. Of course, it always does on quads. Wind is not our friend. Rain is also not our friend. But this has a prop protection on here, so that has a tendency to allow the wind to push the quad around a little bit more. But this weight, even at 15 miles an hour, very, very manageable. And something that surprised me about this was how well it flew in this wind and how well it flies considering what it is. I think that most people who are probably looking at this are also looking at the HALM FPV wingsuit, which I have not reviewed, but I've seen and heard very good things about. So you may want to do some research there if you are looking at this or the HALM FPV. Something to note about HALM FPV is it seems as though that brand has been either acquired or sold, or there's some transfer of brand to going to from HALM FPV to Holybro. Holybro is a good company, but I think if you're buying the wingsuit, you may have a question, or really any other HALM FPV product, a question about parts availability. I do note that the Holybro website does already show what looks like the wingsuit under a different name on their website, so I would expect there to be parts. I don't want to sway you away from something. I just think that's something to be aware of. And I'm starting off with this flight because I think for me, it's more important about the fun. And of course, if you can fly something like this, which is intended to be a little bit safer, it's intended to help you get that scenic, stable footage. If you can fly it more aggressively, then it's a more versatile quad than having a quad that only serves one purpose, like I showed in the video, early on in the video. I don't care necessarily for that sort of slow, steady flight, but I do understand that that is a tool in the quad toolbox that many people like to use. For me, I want to fly around and do the semi-aggressive flight style that I do. This is not going to be a top performer, though. So if you're looking for something that has more speed in a 2.5-inch prop category, this is not going to be it. It just has more weight. It's not made for that. But for something with prop protection, with that top plate that has the rubberized gummies on top to stabilize footage, and that little plug-in for light or naked action cameras, this flies surprisingly well. I've had a good time, and I found myself, I was just flying it earlier today. Wind's still bad, but this flight is actually from a day or two ago. But I just found myself going to this when it came to flying DJI, because I've got some other DJI quads coming up on the channel. I found myself charging at least 3 batteries to fly this one as well, kind of using it as my warm-up for the day, and I just think it flies pretty well. Again, it's not going to have punch-outs that are through the roof. It's not going to have really great high speed. The agility is going to be fairly muted, but I thought this video or this flight helps to show its capabilities and what you can do with it. Of course, you can fly slower with it. You can do the slow, steady cruising to get the cinematic, sort of CineWhoop sort of shots. But this one I thought was much more fun than a typical CineWhoop is. This flight footage that we're looking at now is just more of that traditional sort of CineWhoop. We have full sun out, so that helps us kind of look at the video footage and see how stable it is. Again, you can probably hear the wind. I don't think it's 15 mile an hour. It was like the more aggressive flight that I showed you. I think it's closer to 12. Of course, there's variables to that as wind gusts come and go. But I really like that pass down through the creek. And those that might be thinking about me flying over my neighbor's property, now that the weather's getting warmer, my neighbor and I, we have a tendency to talk a little bit more. And as some of you who follow the channel will know, he's into trains. In one video, I called them remote control trains. But he was talking to me about how he's building up his basement. The reason why they bought that house was because his wife agreed to just let him have the basement for this 2-tier train platform. So he was hauling some wood, and I was helping him carry it in the house. And so said he's going to invite me over when he gets closer to being done. A friend of his actually did a mock-up that they could use the space most effectively to build the platform, and he talked about how the trains are running on digital signals. I don't know anything about trains. It's been 35 years since I've even seen a train that's run on a track, but he's really into it. It's one of his hobbies, and he was very curious about the quads I was flying. You know, how fast can it go? All the typical questions that you would get from someone who's outside the hobby. But this particular flight is more that traditional sort of smooth flying CineWhooping. There's parts of it that is probably a little bit faster. That's just kind of my tendency, is to keep pushing the pitch down and to have fun. I like the speed, the pod racing sort of feel. But I was very impressed with this, and I think if you're looking for something in this category where it has prop protection, it's not as noisy as traditional CineWhoops, and it has the ability to fly not only slow and steady, but also more aggressively, so you can have some additional fun doing flippy floppies or other sorts of things. And it's fairly durable. As you can see there, I hit that tree twice. I centered it, and I came back for a second. I had a number of different crashes because I was flying it more aggressively. As I showed you in the quick roll, my props are a little bit beat up, and so you may find that the footage can be improved by just having fresh, good props on it as well. I just kept flying it with the props that were somewhat chewed up. I didn't bother to switch them out because I wouldn't expect you to always switch your props out. So you get another opportunity to see what the footage is like when your props are a little bit banged up as well. I did also try turtle moding on this, and it didn't work. I'll show you that footage in a picture-in-picture. I was out just cruising around the front, and I had thought I could pass underneath the car, but I bumped into the car and ended up upside down. And I tried to turtle mode, but I couldn't get it to turtle mode. And any of you that have flown these D63 props before, is that just kind of normal for these props, or is that something particular I'm seeing with those props on this quad? Curious about that. I haven't run into too many quads recently that aren't able to turtle mode. So it's something to keep in mind. Of course, if you have an action camera on there, maybe turtle mode works with it mounted up. I don't know yet. This quad is relatively new. I don't expect too many people have it yet. Again, it does come at a pretty heavy price, as do most DJI or Caddx Vista base quads do. You start to push that $280 to $300 value. So you need to do your homework. You need to see a bunch of different videos and be comfortable with your purchase if you are looking for something like this. But in short, if you're looking for my recommendation, I'm keeping this one. Unfortunately for you guys, I won't be giving this little guy away. I either passed on or chose not to review the SMO 4K, that action camera from Beta FPV. But after flying this one a couple of days, I decided to buy the SMO 4K so I could have that in my toolbox of, if I want to get some really nice high definition footage, I can mount it right up to this and I can fly it and get that additional camera view and see if I like that better than I do the stock DJI view. Of course, this is on 50 megabit, and I have turned off the temperature protection so I could start the recording before I armed. That's something I recently learned from you, so thank you for the commenters that has helped me out with DJI recording, because I do a clap sync, so the audio you hear is from a secondary camera. So I can do a clap sync, so when I'm editing the video, I can bring in the camera audio that's sitting on the table as well as the DVR footage that we're watching from the quad now. Hopefully that's plenty of footage. I'll have some more footage that I'll show you in a picture-in-picture when we go back to the desk to talk about some of the finer points. So probably the first thing I need to tell you about this is it is a pusher. So whenever you take off, or if you happen to crash and come down, you need to be relatively certain that there's nothing going through a prop that will keep the prop from spinning if you rearm. Of course, if you're in a bad space, like you've crashed somewhere and you can't just easily go get the quad, then you may have to run that risk. But one of the things that I'm always concerned about when it comes to all-in-ones and pushers is that something is stopping the prop. Even in turtle mode situations as well, whenever the prop can't spin and we arm or we give any throttle, that sends, a lot of voltage to our flight controller, and that can oftentimes result in popping an ESC. So when you have one, whether it's this one or something else that's a pusher, make sure your props can spin, make sure you're on a nice flat surface, and if you don't think you're on a flat surface, do the walk of shame, go walk and get the quad, live to fly another day. So I've mentioned it already, but we'll go over a few things that I think that are important to call out. It has this foam protection over the front. Whether that actually does much for us, I don't know, but it sure can't hurt. It's probably only adds maybe 3 grams total to the weight, maybe 4. It's hard to estimate that stuff because it does go all the way around the hoops. But I did find this to be pretty durable, which means for people who might be starting out, this can be a good candidate. I would recommend at least some sim time first. I would also keep in mind, as I previously warned, this is a pusher, so you want to make sure you're at the very least taking off from a flat surface, and when you do crash, to disarm quickly so that you don't suffer from main board or ESC damage because a prop is stuck and can't spin, but it's trying to drive it. One of the things that I think surprised me, and you heard it in that flight, was, I centered that tree and bounced off of it and hit it again. I found this pretty durable, and I think I said in that video, I'm not listening to the audio while I narrate just for clarification, but one of the things I said was that sounded like something broke. And I checked it, and if you look here, everything is in still good working order. There's nothing snapped or broke. I think on the bottom here, we can see a couple of spots right down in there. It's really hard to see. If I can get some light, that little dark spot down in there, I think that's where a prop was striking. You can see most of my props on the leading edge and the outer leading edge are all kind of curled up from striking some portion of the prop guard. But the prop guards, they're in good working order. I don't know what material they've made. I've got, as I oftentimes do, 30 plus flights on this. I've been flying it for about 10 days, and I found myself kind of drawn to this. I've got some other DJI based quads that I was also flying, and I would find myself charging at least 2 to 4 batteries to take this out with me, and I'd use it as my warm-up pack. Sorry, I know I've probably already said that. I think that there could be a downside to this. You'll have to grade it out for yourself, but I felt like from time to time I could see where the quad was handling the wind fine, but because the wind was maybe catching the camera or something, I get a little bit of unstable image in the main camera. Of course, if we add some weight, maybe that offsets that. I'm not certain of that. Like I said, I ordered a camera to put up here. Unfortunately, my naked GoPro is tied up in a case that's not compatible for this particular quad, and it's so hard to get in here that I didn't want to take it out of this case just to put it back in a different case so I could put it on here. This project is taking me longer than I expected. A word on the batteries. You may have noticed the difference. These are all G&B batteries, even though they're different colors and even have different brand names. RDQ batteries are made by G&B. I found myself drawn to the 554S. I flew at 4S exclusively. I just liked the performance, and I think most of us who've been around a while know that the more square-ish or rectangular shaped batteries tend to perform better. But we've seen that this elongated version has kind of taken over the market. You can still find these, but you do have to poke around a fair bit. I like these. You can find them also. It might be the 3S ones that actually have an odd JST lead coming out of them. They launched at a time where we were still using JST type leads off of the batteries. But so if you're looking at this and you want to use a light battery, and I used a lighter battery so that I could maintain that agility, and I have a fairly small space. Maybe if you're doing a bigger space or you're doing that long sort of cruisy cinematic sort of flying, you may want to go up to a bigger size battery. But this is what I flew, and this is the one I was drawn to. It's also the heaviest of the group, I believe, as well. This is running Betaflight 4.2.5, which is good because that's a really recent edition of Betaflight. We shouldn't have any itching to upgrade that. If you get it down the road and you find that there's a newer version of Betaflight out there, I do not recommend flashing it unless you are well versed in Betaflight setup and tuning. I think GEPRC has done a pretty good job making this quad with a tune that is not just very flyable, but has a good tune, and we have a nice stable image from our DJI-based cameras, and we had that full sun, or nearly full sun flight, to where you could really diagnose that out. You can see I've even pushed my camera angle up more as I've tended to flown it more and more and more. The noise level is oftentimes something that is also being considered in these quads, and I think with a thinner prop guard, as well as more blades on the prop, that has taken the noise level down. Oftentimes in traditional CineWhoops, we find them to be very noisy, so flying them discreetly makes it very, very difficult. But that's another factor in why I think this one is a good overall quad, is it flies pretty well, and it flies acrobatically or aerobatically pretty well. You can do tricks with it, is essentially what I'm saying, and it doesn't prop wash all the time. Matter of fact, from the videos that I've seen of the wingsuit, this seems to fly better with less prop wash than that one. But that's something you should be sure of. Don't take my word for it. When I put on my batteries, let's go over that real quick. So this is how I would do my battery, because if you don't have an action camera, maybe this is something that might be helpful for you. So I would tend to put my battery lead underneath here. This particular one, the battery lead will go under just fine. So I crank it down here, and then I take this and I lay it down between the two pieces of Velcro, giving it a little bit of slack. I don't want to make it taut. And then I would plug my battery in, just like so. So that's how I would run it. I would run it with the taller battery. Oh, excuse me, let me unplug that. I would run it with the battery a little bit taller. Even on these, I would run it the same way. And the main reason is if you lay it flat, it tends to push the battery forward, so then it's resting against, or at least the battery strap is pushing up against this. And I had one particular crash where the battery did come a little bit loose, and I'd noted that it was kind of cockeyed. It was actually this battery shape, and it was hanging out a little bit, and it was against this. I actually thought I had damaged a prop, like maybe lost a blade or had turned a blade, and it turns out that well, one, I had a loose battery, and two, the battery was wedged against this top plate with the rubberized protection where it couldn't move around like it wanted to. So that's something to be aware of as well. I think the last thing that I have about this, and it is a little bit of a complaint, is USB access is a little bit of a pain in the butt. So even with a long-nosed USB port, and this is for the main board, this is not for the Vista, for the main board, originally I took this motor screws all out so that I could move this prop protection around so I could get my USB down in there. I did find later on that I could, with a long nose USB, if you don't have a long nose, I don't think this will work, but I can move this, hopefully I can show it effectively. I can move this without tearing the foam, and I can get my USB cable or my connection there. I would tend to hold this down like that, just because I don't want a lot of pressure on the USB connector. I don't want that coming off the board. So if you choose to do it the way I did the second and third time around with just bending this down, keep it kind of leveraged so that it doesn't press up against your cable, causing pressure on the connector. So that is a downside. It is a pain in the bottom to get to that. Also, you know, we have to software update most of these, and we have to register them with DJI through the DJI Assistant app, and then we have to use the binding. In order to do that, you have to take these 4 outside screws down, and this entire assembly comes down. There is enough wire in there to where you can bring this down, and you can press the button so you can do your binding, your goggles, and or the remote if you're using that. It's another step that I don't see a way around it in this configuration, but, you know, the USB port essentially lines up with these whoops, so you're not going to get to it. You might be able to find a way to press the button. Where is the USB port? I can't even see it. I think it's on this side. I think the USB port's right over here. And there might be a way to press the button, but you're still going to have to get a USB-C connection in there in order to be able to plug it into the DJI Assistant and do all the things we need to do. So, unfortunately, you do have to take out these screws in order to do it. I guess one last thing we can always look at is the frame flexibility. Oops, I had my thumb in the wrong spot. Oh, let me grab the motors. You know, it's fairly rigid. It's not stiff by any stretch. You know, it's got a 2.5-inch plate here, 2-inch plate here, or sorry, a 2.5 millimeter here, 2 millimeter here, and then the bottom plate's 2 millimeters as well. We do have the TPU connector that has our antenna on it, and it is a stiff end antenna, stiff tube. We've been seeing oftentimes these antennas have been coming with a flexible, but this one is stiff. I suppose it needs to be stiff in order to be able to plug into this TPU, otherwise it might be too soft. I did find in one particular crash that this rotated. This TPU is just slid around a post, a typical traditional metal standoff post, and so it can swing around because it's just got that one point it's mounted to. I think that's all I have to say about the GEPRC CineLog25. It has a fairly unique name. I should point out that it's printed right here if I'm saying that wrong, and there is our brand right here. Of course, we've got more branding all over the quad. It's a quad I like. It's a quad that, unfortunately for you guys, I won't be giving away unless something better comes along. For right now, this is actually one of my favorite DJI quads for the space I fly. I wouldn't fly it inside, though. It's too heavy. I think if I were flying inside, I would still go with the CineWhoop. But I think overall, I would rather have this than the CineWhoop. If that helps in some way. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate your time. And thanks for watching.